chronicles of a broken chain from the Killer and Keeper universe. The Bloodchain Sons, a roaming warband of orphans from the war-ravaged archipelago of Kahreth, who wear chains forged from their conquered foes. Each rusted link is carved with Atlas's symbol and clinks with the blood of trials. Bloodchain Sons Bio. Warband Overview. The Bloodchain Sons are a feared roaming warband forged from the shattered youth of Kahreth, a war-ravaged archipelago that once defied Atlas in open rebellion. Orphaned by conquest and bound by blood oaths, the Bloodchain Sons follow a brutal internal code that stands in stark contrast to the rigid hierarchies of Atlas's sanctioned faiths. Their law values survival, defiance, and earned strength over birthright or divine anointment, while Atlas's sanctioned faiths uphold a rigid hierarchy built on divine favor, bloodline, and ancestral merit. The Bloodchain Sons reject such sanctified order. They see divine anointment as a myth, crafted to protect the weak and perpetuate submission. Where the temples preach peace through providence, the Sons teach pain through trial. Their letters rise not from lineage, but from scars, each one a testament to battles survived, chains forged, and the storm faced without retreat. One such moment came when two initiates, one a descendant of a famed stormcaller, the other a nameless orphan, were cast into the trial pit during the rite of reckoning. The descendant hesitated to strike, clinging to ancestral pride, while the orphan shattered bone and chain to survive. It was the orphan who emerged, bloodied and broken, and was welcomed with forged links and fire, where the other's lineage was forgotten. From this tale, the Sons preach, heritage weighs less than the hand that grips steel. This defiance attracts the disillusioned and the dispossessed from other warbands and border clans, while instilling fear in orthodox sects who see them as heretical but too volatile to confront directly. To the Sons, Atlas is not merely a deity, but the very storm incarnate, a force to emulate, not to beg. He is the first breaker of chains, the thunder that cracks tyrants, and the silence that follows devastation. They reject the sanitized portrayals of him in temple frescoes, preferring the myths of Atlas as the serpent of storms, a wild, coiling force that devours the sky. His lightning is seen as both judgment and liberation, his fury a baptism in truth. The Sons invoke Atlas in battle not with prayer, but with the roar of thunder drawn into their chains and voices. Every rusted link they wear is both scripture and defiance. Every storm they endure a sacrament to their chosen storm god. Among their many sacred names for him, none is held in more feral reverence than the lightning beast, a title they wear as badge and challenge alike. It evokes the primal storm that hunts the heavens, untamed and unbound, and reminds each son that their god is not a shepherd, but a predator. They chant it before battle, etch it into shattered helms, and name their rites in its honor. For to be a beast of lightning is not to bow, but to bite, and to teach the sky how to roar. These survivors turned soldiers now march under their own law, driven by vengeance, faith, and the code of the chain. They are infamous across the southern dunes and sea cliffs, recognized by the sound of their rusted chains and the echo of the storms they bring. Origin: Kahreth, a volcanic chain of islands once lush with dense canopies, mineral rivers, and skyfire reefs, stood defiant in the age of unification. It was a realm of tempest shamans, coral-forged blades, and ancestral bloodlines, where the people revered both sea and storm. Their independence crumbled when Atlas, in a celestial act of judgment, raised the skies above Kahreth's heart isle with a cataclysmic lightning storm, a divine retribution against defiance. The blasts shattered stone, boiled tides, and incinerated the sky into a permanent cloud of volcanic ash. Most adults perished. Those who survived were children, stripped of guidance but not will. Tekka's faithful came in the storm's wake, cloaked in mercy and doctrine. Known across the continents as the older sister of Atlas, Tekka is revered as the healer of wounds and bearer of grace, a divine figure who channels balance, empathy, and inner strength. While Atlas embodies the storm's wrath, Tekka represents its calm after the fury, and her teachings are followed by millions who seek unity and peace through ritual harmony. Her disciples, the Peace Marchers, carry her sigil, a palm open to the sky, and their presence often heralds the rebuilding of communities ravaged by war. They offered shelter, peace, and faith to the children of Kahreth, weaving songs of solace through shattered ruins. But not all children bent to kindness. Some saw survival not in harmony, but in fury. A rebellion kindled in silence. The divide broke violently the night Vireth, once a golden disciple of Tekka, shattered the obsidian chalice during a sacred peace rite. He roared, "The storm does not kneel to the tide," and walked barefoot through the ashes into exile, followed by the defiant. These orphans forged a new identity in the lava-forged crags and drowned ruins of their homeland, where they smeared ash onto their skin in mourning rites and embedded shards of storm glass into their chain links as vows of vengeance. Around volcanic vents, they chanted to the thunder, naming each echo after the dead, and scorched their palms on flame-forged altars to bind themselves in suffering and steel. Their unity was not born of blood, but of ash, anguish, and an oath never to kneel again. An identity forged as much by the land's wrath as their own. They bound themselves not with silk or scripture, but with rusted links torn from the chains of their oppressors. In fire forges and broken ship hulls, they built their first sanctum, the chain forge of Harnhall, where every trial, weapon, and vow was born in fire. They began to call themselves the Bloodchain Sons, children of ruin, baptized by storm and chained by oath. Their new creed held pain as truth, scars as wisdom, and rebellion as sanctity. Their doctrine evolved in opposition to Tekka's, every rite a reversal, every link a defiant echo. Over time, their chains became sacred texts, their trials became law, and their warband grew from exiles into a crucible of unrelenting survivors. Kahreth's beauty faded into myth, but its bloodline stormed across the southern coasts, announcing with each clang of rusted chain, "The storm does not forget." Symbol. Each member bears a chain of rusted iron, forged from weapons and manacles taken from conquered foes. Every link is etched with Atlas's sigil, a cracked lightning bolt coiled like a serpent. These chains are worn across the chest or arms, a burden and badge alike. Older members often bear symbols from another era, their chains thicker and more heavily inscribed, reflecting trials and wars long past. Some wear links taken from the chains of Vireth, forged in the ashes of the obsidian chalice, while others display talon-carved rings from the storm beasts of the daggered gate. One ancient war captain bears a melted shard of the Chainforge's original anvil as a pendant, its heat scars blackening the links around it. These relics do not merely decorate, they embody epochs of sacrifice and rebellion. a living script of storm-bound legacy etched in rust and bone. These generational variants evolve. Some links hold stormglass shards or scorched relics from ancestral battles. Every generation forges its own additions, fire-tempered rings, bone beads, or links marked with personal epithets, preserving the lineage of defiance through each unique forge of pain. To the Sons, this variation is not deviation, but a living archive of survival. It is said that during the siege of Brazen Teeth, a young warrior named Vess carried a link forged by her grandfather, a ring of blackened iron etched with the names of the fallen from the Stormwalk massacre. As the flames rose and her shield broke, that single link deflected a spearhead aimed at her throat. She survived, and her survival was seen not as chance, but as the chain's will made manifest. In contrast, the tale of Jarn Hollowspike speaks of a warrior who discarded his ancestral link in favor of untested forge work. During the Daggered Gate assault, his armor failed, and he was found impaled on his own chain. His story is invoked as a caution: forget the past, and the storm forgets you. Proof that the storm takes many forms and leaves many marks. Culture and traditions. The Sons practice the rite of binding. When a youth is inducted, they must forge a new link with their own hands and spill blood upon it. Feasts are rare, but battles are sacred. Scars are counted as honors. Songs are war cries. Betrayal is punished by burning the traitor's chain link by link. Over time, each generation forges a unique variation of the rite, introduced by their generation's chosen leader, who must be the first to undertake it. Kahreth introduced the rite of Ash Walk, the carrying of a burning chain through the volcanic ash of Vulcan's rift. Proving defiance could endure pain without retreat. Brek-One-Soul forged the rite of silent blood, where aspirants fought in absolute silence under a thunderless sky, blood the only permitted speech. The current rite, devised by Sen the Clinkborn, is the trial of the lone storm. A knight survived alone in the Woundspine Barrens with nothing but a forged link and the will to summon storm. Each rite carries the signature of its originator and is remembered as both a trial and a torch, lighting the path for the generations to follow. These rituals not only test strength and resolve, but crystallize each generation's evolving philosophy of leadership and defiance. For example, the rite of Ash Walk, born during the scorched aftermath of the Obsidian Chalice betrayal, emphasized endurance in suffering as the highest virtue. Brek-One-Soul's rite of silent blood reflected a period of internal schism, prioritizing silent unity and discipline under invisible pressure. Sen the Clinkborn's trial of the lone storm, by contrast, embodies a younger generation's focus on individual survival and self-summoning of strength amidst isolation. Each rite responds to a unique epoch of threat or revelation, shaping not just who leads, but how they lead, as forged storms rather than inherited flames. From the pain endured in the rite of Ash Walk to the solitude braved in the trial of the lone storm, each trial reflects the Warband's shifting vision of what it means to lead, not by lineage, but by legacy earned in storm and fire. As the Warband adapts to new enemies and challenges, so too do the rites evolve, ensuring that the leaders they produce are forged not merely in tradition, but in relevance to the times they must face. Among the Sons, a legendary few are whispered of in reverence, warriors who undertook not just their generation's rite, but every rite still remembered in the Iron Litany. These rare exemplars, called the Chain-Wrought, are living totems of the storm's evolution, their chains bearing a link from each trial. They serve as mentors, guardians of tradition, and reminders that pain, when endured with purpose, becomes legacy. Of those still living, known chain-wrought include Orvek the Stormborn, whose eyes are veined with lightning, Ilessa Chainfire, the only woman to complete all rites under open sky, and Graskember Vein, bearer of the Scorchbrand mantle. Among the fallen are Derek Ironcry, who died at the Battle of Brazen Teeth while shielding initiates from a collapsing tower, Vial of the Silent Rite, slain in the Ashwake Revolt with his chain burnt black, and old Harn Velcroth, who passed in peace beneath the Chainforge, his links laid into the Warband's shrine. These evolving rites serve not only as initiation, but as sacred storytelling, each link a new verse in the chain's legacy. Not all sons take up arms. Among them are the chainbinders, smiths, lore keepers, and seers who maintain the forges, record the oral rites, and interpret the echoes of past battles through relics. They preserve the memory of fallen kin and tend to the younger or wounded. One such chainbinder, Velk Ironchant, crafts memorial links from the melted weapons of the fallen and recites their last rites in storm verse at the Chainforge's base. Among the Ashweavers, the matron Jessa Smokehand is renowned for weaving ash veils that carry the scent of scorched sigils, set to grant clarity in battle and dreams. Her veils have become relics, worn by veterans on their final march. These quiet titans ensure the Warband's soul is never lost, only reforged. The Ashweavers craft ritual garb, mend armor, and prepare ash veils for battle rites. The chainmenders, often former warriors themselves, provide healing and salve work through storm-infused herbs and lightning-touched poultices. These members are not lesser. Their scars are quieter, their strength steady. To walk among them is to feel the breath between the storm's roar, and many warriors return to their circles in old age, passing on wisdom before their chains are finally laid into the forge. Beliefs. They believe that only those who survive suffering can wield true power. This creed is embodied in the myth of Koran the Shackled, whose legacy endures not just as a tale, but as a bloodline. Some among the Bloodchain's sons claim to bear his storm-marked spirit, a phenomenon called the Chain Wake, where a warrior's veins pulse with crackling energy during battle. These so-called chainborn are revered and feared, often rising swiftly through the ranks or becoming seers of pain and fury. Their emergence ignites awe among some, who hail them as lightning incarnate, echoes of Koran's will forged through agony. Others regard them with suspicion, wary of prophecy's potential for pride and division. Chainborn rapidly attract fervent followers, reshaping leadership with their storm-marked charisma, while stirring conflict from enclaves who enforce trials to test their worth. Succession rites turn volatile, as these marked warriors invoke divine right, and duels often determine not only leadership, but the Warband's moral compass. In this tension, the Chainborn remain both catalyst and symbol, uniting some under storm-forged vision, dividing others by the thunder's deafening call. A phenomenon called the Chain Wake, where a warrior's veins pulse with crackling energy during battle. These so-called chainborn are revered and feared, often rising swiftly through the ranks or becoming seers of pain and fury. Their presence fuels disputes over succession and leadership, with rival claimants invoking Koran's name to justify their rise. Koran was a youth once captured and imprisoned in the drowned pits of the Kahreth Isles. Chained for 7 years beneath crashing tides and fed only salt and storm water, he emerged with lightning in his veins and a voice that cracked stone, believed to have been struck by one of Atlas's lightning bolts. He forged his own chain from the bones of his jailers and led a revolt that turned slaves into storm priests. His tale is recited during rites of pain, and each link worn by a blood-chained son is said to echo with Koran's roar. Pain is seen as purification. Their code, known as the Iron Litany, teaches chains break the weak, bind the worthy. Atlas is seen not as a god to worship, but a storm to emulate. Destructive, relentless, free. Notable members: Veyor Chainspeaker, age 32, Warband leader, known for his eerie ability to read the chain's sounds like omens. He is tall, sinewy, with pale bronze skin webbed in storm scars that pulse faintly during storms. His eyes are mismatched, one a vivid gray, the other a storm-glass orb forged after the rite of resonant pain, which grants him flashes of foresight. His armor is a patchwork of scorched links and bone-inlaid plates, and he carries the Whisper Chains, a dual-looped weapon that hums with resonance. He claims each echo whispers a fragment of the future. His commands often align uncannily with events, earning him reverence as both tactician and prophet. However, his rise has not gone unchallenged. During the Red Link confrontation, Veyor was challenged by Mord Vex, a veteran chainborn who accused him of forging visions through ritual deceit. Their duel took place beneath the chain forge during a storm watch, a thunder-lit ritual night. Veyor fought with the fluid, unpredictable style of a storm incarnate, his chains echoing discordant prophecy. Mord struck true several times, even cracking Veyor's ribcage and severing part of his shoulder guard. But as lightning struck the forge's altar, Veyor's storm-glass eye flared, and he wrapped Mord's own chain around the veteran's throat, pinning him against the prophecy wall. Veyor whispered a prediction that made Mord drop his weapon. What he said is unknown, but the echoes lingered in iron for days. Mord yielded. The outcome sent a shiver through the Warband's fractured ranks. It elevated Veyor's aura as a living conduit of Atlas's storm, reinforcing the reverent faction's dominance, while silencing, though not extinguishing, the skepticism of others. Those who doubted saw not only a victory, but a warning. The chain does not forgive hesitation, and the storm speaks loudest through the one who bends no knee. Since then, few have dared question the chain speaker's visions. Among the Warband, factions remain. Some see him as a chosen vessel of Atlas's will. Others fear he is the storm's puppet. During the siege of Blackthorn Cavern, one of Veyor's predictions saved a flank seconds before an avalanche crushed an ambush party, silencing many doubters. For a time. Ira Thornsister, age 24, strategist and stormcaller, orphaned priestess turned tactician. She stands with regal defiance, clad in dark-wrapped silks, beneath layered chainmail that crackles faintly with static. Her hair, black with streaks of white ash, flows behind her in battle like a banner of fury. Her eyes, one marked with a lightning-burn scar, gleam with fervor and sharp calculation. Ira carries twin relic ash gourds strapped to her belt and a storm-inscribed blade forged in the ember crucible. She orchestrated the chain ambush at Black Spire and is famed for using storm-charged ash to blind an entire cavalry charge. Ira blends sacred rites into her battle plans, invoking storm-born hymns mid-skirmish and casting relic ash in ritual arcs set to channel divine chaos. Her warcraft is a liturgy of ruin, faith forged into fury. At the Chain Council of Vulcan's Watch, she clashed with old Varkesh before the full circle of Warband elders. The chamber, carved into the basalt cliffs, echoed with thunder as the two thunder priests debated the will of Atlas. Yera demanded fire and fury, a preemptive assault on a rising sect of heretics in the eastern dunes. Varkesh urged restraint, favoring omens and insight. The clash culminated in an invocation rite, where their storm calls summoned dueling visions. Yera's, a blaze of red lightning consuming a false prophet. Varkesh's, a silent rain washing over a buried temple. The council split, not by vote, but by silence. Ira left the chamber marked by cinders and stormlight, her will unbowed, her path set for war. Nock the Hollow, age unknown. A mute executioner, Nock is an imposing figure of dread and devotion, wrapped head to toe in rusted iron chains. His armor is a second skin, fused links forged with bone and scorched leather, layered in thick silence cloaks that muffle every step. A slit in his helm reveals eyes like thunder clouds, heavy, unreadable, and lit from within by stormlight. Scars coil down his arms like lightning paths, some fresh, others ritual burnt into flesh. His silence, a vow made upon the smoldering bones of his twin brother, lost during a failed rite, is a storm-bound sacrament. Nock has not spoken since. Instead, he lets his chain do the talking. His blade is the black hook, a crescent-forged executioner's edge said to sever not only flesh, but spirit. His first blow is always fatal, and his silence turns every step into prophecy. Nock still walks the warpath. At the Battle of the Daggered Gate, he single-handedly breached the enemy's barricade by walking through fire with a banner of flame-chained bones, each link still sizzling with embedded embers. He tore through their front line with his black hook, slicing limbs like saplings, leaving trails of blood that hissed as it touched molten ground. The war chief of the bone-clad covenant tried to parry. Nock severed his arms at the elbow, then split his skull from crown to collarbone in a single blow so clean the body stood for 3 seconds before it collapsed. In the storm of screaming glass, he advanced like a golem reborn in silence. Shards of obsidian storm glass shattered against his armor, embedding in his cloak and face. He did not flinch. A winged zealot descended upon him with a spear of thunder steel. Nock caught the shaft mid-air, crushed it with one hand, and sent the zealot crashing with a swing so brutal it snapped the spine in flight. Blood misted in the stormlight, and Nock walked on, a silhouette in red rain. At the Hollow Gleam massacre, Nock descended upon the heretic ranks like a specter of wrath. Without a sound, he tore through the outer line, tearing out throats and shattering spines with his bare hands before they could scream. At the center, he eviscerated a rogue storm priest by ripping the chain belt from his robes, coiling it like a serpent, and wrenching it tight around his throat until vertebrae snapped and blood sprayed in a geyser over the altar. The priest's corpse writhed a moment longer before Nock flung it onto the coals of a ceremonial pyre, igniting it mid-scream. With a single sweep of the black hook, he impaled 3 chanting acolytes, their entrails unraveling like crimson ribbons as he dragged them across the dirt, their bones rattling like prayer chimes. He dragged them screaming into a sacred fire pit, their bodies consumed as Nox stood above them, silent and still. Witnesses say he did not blink. When he turned, the chains at his side struck the ground with such weight, it cracked the stone. Warriors say that when Nox chains move, the storm itself halts, and the gods, if they exist, dare not speak. Breck One Soul, age 29. Survived a full storm strike during the trial of Shattered Sky, and emerged with eyes scorched black, twin pools of obsidian crackling faintly with lightning. His skin is marked by fractal burns that pulse subtly when he speaks, his voice low and gravel-laced with thunder's echo. He wears a ragged mantle of stormcaller veils over a ribbed cuirass made from chainmail, threaded with lightning-struck sinew. Around his throat hangs the Stormbone relic, a carved fragment of the tree he was chained to during his trial, still warm to the touch. Breck leads the Warcallers, his chants an arcane fusion of storm rites and primal invocation. To be within earshot of his voice in battle is to feel the air thicken, the sky coil, and the earth tremble. His chants start as low murmurs, barely above breath, but crescendo into seismic howls that rupture air and blood alike. During the siege of Saltspire, his thunder hymn caused a landslide that swallowed an entire flank of the enemy. Warriors claimed the rocks screamed his name. To stand among the suns when Breck begins a chant is to step inside a living storm. One might feel the vibrations in their bones before sound reaches their ears. Thunder seems to sync with his breath. Voices join his in layers, deep growls from older chainborn, sharp rhythmic stomps of boots, the metallic clatter of chains struck against breastplates. The chant, break the sky, breathe the flame, turns into a wave of sound and fury, drowning out fear itself. In those moments, under flashing skies and trembling earth, every warrior feels not like a man, but a thunderclap given form, a forbidden chant of his, known only as the Last Surge, is said to crack stone from leagues away and shatter the minds of those who hear it unprepared. Jan Redmall, age 36, a juggernaut of iron and purpose. Jan is a storm-worn warrior, known for his brute strength and thunderous heart. Standing over 6.5 feet tall, his frame is clad in scorched steel plate, engraved with old war prayers, with a rusted chain skirt and shoulder pauldrons forged from the shattered blades of fallen foes. His helmet is horned and blackened, with only a slit revealing storm-glowing eyes, and a face marked by soot and battle scars. Strapped to his chest plate is the cracked mask of a heretic prophet, a trophy from the Battle of Brazen Teeth, where he crushed the prophet's skull under his warhammer in a single blow as lightning crashed behind him, declaring it the will of Atlas. Jan's warhammer, Stormjaw, is an immense thunderhead-shaped weapon charged with static sigils. It was forged during the Rite of Hammerborn Flame, a trial of endurance where Jan stood alone on the edge of Vulcan's rift, his body wrapped in raw chain, as he pounded a forged stone with a storm shard until it split. The shards were quenched in the blood of a fallen beast and reforged beneath a storm sky. The haft was bound in scorched hide from the same beast, etched with Jane's own battle scars. The final sigils were branded during a lightning strike, seared into the steel while he held it to the sky, arms unflinching as thunder roared overhead. Stormjaw is said to carry echoes of that tempest. It hums with pressure, and arcs flash along its edge when Jaen speaks his oaths before battle. To him, the hammer is not just a weapon, but a creed, each strike a sermon, each arc of electricity a verse in the gospel of wrath. It symbolizes not only fury, but sacrifice, the pain endured to protect the future. Forged from trial and blood, Stormjaw embodies the storm-forged legacy Jain teaches to every initiate, strength tempered by suffering, and the unyielding will to stand as both bulwark and stormfront for those yet to rise. In battle, he swings with earth-shattering force, bones breaking like dry twigs beneath each arc. At the Battle of the Burning Span, he held the far side of a collapsing molten bridge alone, swatting flaming chariots into the lava below. He waded through screaming enemies, each impact of Stormjaw sending shock waves through the stone and flinging soldiers like rag dolls. When a heretic brute charged him, Jain caught the warrior mid-leap, slammed him to the ground with such force that the impact cracked the bridge, then hurled him into the flames, still alive and howling. Yet beneath this thunder is a deep, grounding calm. Jain is beloved by the young sons, not merely for his strength, but for his warmth. He trains initiates in the Forge of Wrath with patient sternness, laughing as he knocks them down, always helping them rise again. He teaches them not just to kill, but to live, to endure. In whispered moments after drills, he speaks of a future he may never see, but hopes they will. One where strength means more than survival, where they forge new chains not from conquest, but from kinship. You fight to live, he tells them, so others will not have to. Among the sons, he is both firestorm and hearthlight, destroyer of foes, builder of brothers. Sen the Clink-born, age 19. A prodigy of the chain and the youngest known son to forge a full chainmail from enemy links alone, Sen stands as a symbol of raw tenacity and rising fury. He is wiry, lean with hardened muscle, skin bronzed from Baron's heat, and ritually seared with the marks of every trial he's endured. His chainmail, a patchwork of shattered foes, glows faintly at the edges, each link inscribed with the names of those he defeated. His hair is closely shorn, save a top knot bound in scorched chain cord, and his eyes are dark and storm-hungry. At the clash of copper bones, Sen's fury broke the tide. Leaping from a collapsing cliff, he landed in the heart of a warband and fought with ruthless precision. His chainmail was aflame from arrow fire, his forearm gashed to the bone, yet he moved like lightning's echo, tearing out tendons with hooked gauntlets and slamming foes into the canyon walls until bone burst through skin. When their champion lunged, Sen grabbed the man's jaw, drove a forged nail through his skull, and let his corpse fall still twitching into the fire-choked ravine. Despite this ferocity, Sen is a cherished figure in the Forge of Wrath. With young initiates, his tone shifts, stern but warm, his hands steady as he guides theirs through steelcraft. He teaches not only how to endure pain, but how to shape it into armor. His trials fuse symbolic suffering with brutal reality, such as the rite of the burning chain, where initiates must carry red-hot links across the barrens until their arms bleed. He speaks of a future not yet built, one where they can forge peace from storm. To the young, he is a tempest in motion. To the old, he is proof that the chain endures. Yet where Sen teaches motion as freedom, Breck embodies the storm as unity, and Varkesh holds the chain as silence and memory. Each philosophy reflects its era. Sen's blazing defiance, Breck's harmonized fury, Varkesh's carved endurance. Their coexistence sparks both inspiration and quiet conflict. as younger sons chase storms alone, while elders anchor to ancient rites. Within this generational tension, the blood-chain sons do not fracture. They evolve, a warband welded by heat, hammer, and divergent sparks. Old Varkesh, age 61. The oldest living son, Varkesh is a gaunt sentinel, draped in ancient chain links, scorched by generations of battle. His skin is a parchment of burn scars and inked prophecy runes, his eyes like smoldering coals beneath a cracked helm, crowned with bone fangs and etched with thunder script. A cloak of sun-bleached hide, once a banner, now ragged with years, trails from his shoulders, its hem crusted with ash and rust. His gauntlets are made from the fused mandibles of storm beasts, and around his neck hangs a whisper chain of fallen commanders, each link engraved with a lost name. His boots are wrapped in old priest robes, char-stained and leather-bound, to muffle his steps like a creeping storm. He carved Atlas's sigil into the stone of Black Hail Pass, with a bone dagger soaked in lightning blood, marking it as sacred before holding it against 4 attacking bands. A feat so brutal that the stone itself reportedly weeps in storms. Though aged, Varkesh still burns with violent clarity. In the Battle of Splintertide, he wielded a rust-forged chain scythe in both hands, carving down zealots in sweeping arcs that left entrails strung across the ridgeline like prayer banners. He fought with a cold precision that unnerved even hardened sons, flaying a heretic champion alive to inscribe a warning on the man's ribs with his dagger before casting him from the cliffs. His wrath is myth, but so is his wisdom. Varkesh is now guardian of the Chainwatch Path, a silent oracle ringed by flame-worn idols. Younger sons approach him not with words, but with offerings of fire and chain. He does not speak, but teaches through ritual and storm-etched symbol. A circle of disciples known as the Chain Seers has formed around him, interpreting his gestures, the patterns of ash he leaves, and the storms that follow his path. He speaks often through silence, a pause where a command should be, a look that freezes disputes. He once trained beside famed figures like Harn Velkroth and Vile of the Silent Rite, both long past, their chains now woven into the walls of the Chain Forge. It is said Varkesh once walked unarmed into a hurricane to learn Atlas's will, returning days later with bloodless hands and storm marks along his spine. Some whisper of rivals who question his growing influence, fearing a drift toward mysticism that may fracture the Warband's iron-bound pragmatism. One such rival, Jek of the Red Hollow, openly opposes the Chain Seers, claiming Varkesh's silence leads more to death than to vision. Yet the youngest sons follow Varkesh still, drawn not just to his power, but to the depth of purpose that lives behind his smoldering gaze. Notable events or battles. The Night of Iron Rain, when they ambushed a convoy of Tharnval inquisitors during a blood moon storm. The red light turned ash into flame and storm into madness. Ira Thornzister led with a storm veil ritual that shrouded the canyon in choking sulfuric mist, her face masked not only by ritual paint, but by a silence that weighed more than any chain. Each breath, drawn with the tension of grief, made doctrine. She moved with the focus of someone who had seen too much and said too little. From the shadows, Nock the Hollow moved like a reaping wraith, his black hook cleaving heads clean from shoulders and tearing rib cages wide open with surgical slashes. Behind his blank iron mask, Nock whispered names, not of enemies, but of fallen brothers whose blood was never answered. Each strike a quiet vow to remember in silence, what the storm would scream aloud. One inquisitor's face was ripped away by chain hook, revealing a screaming mask of muscle before being silenced by a boot to the skull. Another was pinned by ash darts and left to burn alive as the suns marched past without glancing. Bodies were left in heaps, organs spilled like ritual offerings beneath the blood moon. Not a word was spoken, only the sound of chains slithering through the fog and the wet thud of finality. The chains taken that night, drenched in soot and blood, were melted and reforged into the Stormcrest banner, now carried by Vare himself as a silent testament to fury, precision, and sacred carnage. That night became a defining myth for the Bloodchain Sons, a ritual of terror woven into their legend. From it grew the doctrine of silence in storm, a battle rite that commands no words be spoken in vengeance. Among foes, it solidified their dread as shadows incarnate. Among allies, it became proof that retribution, delivered unseen, was the truest voice of the storm, now carried by Veor himself as a silent testament to fury, precision, and sacred carnage. Siege of Saltspire held an entire cliffside fortress against 3 coastal legions using only rope bridges and lightning bombs. The suns turned the cliffs into thunderous death traps, where every stone echoed with the screams of the falling. For 9 nights, war hymns surged like storm calls through the hollowed rocks, disorienting enemy scouts with dissonant rhythms and chain percussion. Flaming bodies lit the sea below as lightning bombs tore through siege ladders and scorched battlements, leaving smoldering craters filled with shattered limbs. On the 10th night, Breck-One-Soul stood atop the central spire, bare-chested beneath a storm-writhing sky. His voice, thunder-wrought and thick with fury, unleashed the chant, "Break the sky, breathe the flame." As his voice crescendoed, cracks spiderwebbed the cliff face, and a controlled landslide buried the enemy's final push beneath tons of shattering rock and burning debris. Screams echoed for hours, trapped in collapsing gorges. Among the enemy ranks, horror metastasized into superstition. Some whispered that Breck's voice carried the echo of a god's wrath, while others believed the suns were not men but storm-made revenants. Veterans broke ranks at the sound of the chant alone, eyes wide with the haunted knowledge of past massacres. Even before the rocks fell, hearts had already fractured. The sea ran red and ash drifted for days. The few survivors were left maimed, their minds shattered, unable to recount anything but Breck's voice and the chains that danced like fangs through the smoke. In the years that followed, their fragmented testimonies birthed a host of contradictory legends. Some told of a storm god's herald cloaked in lightning, others of death spirits made flesh by vengeance. Among border camps and coastal fortresses, commanders invoked the tale as both warning and curse. Soldiers whispered Breck's name before battle, not in prayer, but in dread, while bards twisted the account into songs that echoed in shattered taverns, each version more haunted than the last. The memory of that night became a weapon of its own, a spectral drum beat that hollowed the courage of those who dared to stand against the suns. Ashwake Revolt. A surprise uprising in the port city of Kahreth's Maw. The Ashwake began under a shroud of coastal fog and blood-red moonlight. The suns, cloaked in tar and shadow, broke open the salt mines where slaves lay chained in pits. Each captive was handed a rusted weapon and wrapped in a blood-drenched banner. One woman, blind in one eye and chained in the mines for 12 years, held the blade like a memory reignited. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of reclaimed wrath. A boy, no older than 13, wept as a banner soaked with his brother's blood was draped across his shoulders, the salt sting of tears mingling with ash on his lips. The iron in their hands felt heavier than chains, forged not by their captors, but by a new purpose burning behind their ribs. In that act, a forgotten rite was reborn. The blade-bearing, once a holy vigil of the storm-ash priests, where oppressed souls received steel beneath a crimson sky and swore vengeance beneath falling ash. The sons had not planned a ritual, but legend stirred in the blood, and the storm bore witness. The moment reverberated beyond the city. Whispers of the uprising surged through the coastal towns like fire through dry reed. Oppressed enclaves held secret vigils, lighting storm-glass shards in tribute. Governors and merchant princes bolstered their guards or fled entirely, fearing the wrath awakened in Kahreth's maw might march next beneath their banners. In distant courts, masked emissaries debated whether to denounce or emulate the sun's brutal justice, sensing the tectonic shift of power beneath the ash-laced winds. In that moment, each soul ceased to be a prisoner. They became flame-bearers of vengeance incarnate. Screams echoed as the first Templars fell, flayed by bone hooks, gutted in alleyways, their tongues nailed to temple doors as a warning. Chains were melted over their limbs while still alive, screams becoming a hymn to Atlas's fury. The uprising ignited a cascade of horrors. Priests crucified to the docks with storm-glass shards in their eyes, inquisitors dragged behind chain carts until their bones carved grooves in the basalt streets. Blood mixed with the tide as the suns turned the harbor into a cauldron of slaughter. Fires roared high enough to blacken the towers of the high chapel, where the final Templars were thrown from the spire into a sea turned crimson. The revolt inspired uprisings in nearby towns, forging a wider storm of defiance that reshaped the Bloodchain Sun's legacy. What began as a savage retaliation became a legend of liberation and fury. From that crimson tide rose not just warriors, but icons, whispered names etched in flame and ash. In the eyes of both enemy and ally, the sons were no longer exiles or orphans. They had become avatars of wrath, vessels of a god who answered prayer with chain and fire. As whispers of the broken litany, a doctrine of vengeance written in ash and chain spread like plague. A new world began to splinter from the old. Atlas's lesser legions deserted or burned their banners, and Tharnval responded with purges so savage entire coasts were left in charred silence. Beyond the immediate borders, distant empires and foreign powers watched with growing unease. Some sent spies disguised as pilgrims to gather intelligence. Others tightened the grip on their own marginalized classes, fearing the rise of similar insurrections. In the skybound sanctuaries of the mountain lords, chants of the broken litany were banned outright, while southern merchant kings debated funding militias or hiring sons as mercenary proxies to control unrest. The storm in Kahreth's maw had not merely reshaped one realm. It echoed across continents, a thunderclap of rebellion that made the rulers of distant thrones glance nervously at their own chained foundations. In the political vacuum that followed, power fractured. Former city-states, once bound by allegiance to Atlas's dogma, began splintering into war councils and zealot enclaves, each claiming righteous succession. Merchant lords rose as war brokers, trading weapons and relics for loyalty, while heretical faiths flourished in the ruins. From this chaos, emerged two formidable factions, the Ember Pact and the Chainveil Covenant. The Ember Pact, forged by a conclave of exiled storm priests and rebel tacticians, champions an ideology of ritualized wrath and disciplined fury. They anoint their warriors with scorched oils and carry firebrands imbued with storm glass shards, preaching that the storm must be wielded, not worshipped. Their leader, Ardana Flamewake, is said to bear a relic blade, once bathed in the blood of a martyr inquisitor. This blade, known as Ember Morn, was forged from the tempered edge of a shattered tribunal glaive, once wielded in the purge of Hollow Sanctum. Legend holds that its metal was quenched in sacred fire, drawn from the ash pit of Zevalos, where condemned prophets once howled their final visions. Every bearer of Ember Morn is said to suffer dreams laced with prophecy and flame, a blade that sings in tongues only the furious understand. Ardana claimed it after single combat against the Iron Warden of Kalespire, whose death cry scorched her name into the Ember Pact's founding charter. Opposing them in philosophy, though not yet in battle, is the Chainveil Covenant, a secretive alliance of archivists, assassins, and seers who believe vengeance must be silent, sacred, and untraceable. Their rites are performed in abandoned cathedrals, their warriors veiled in soot-dyed silk, and their chains inscribed with names spoken only in dreams. Rumors tell of their high priestess, Veyara the Veiled, who communes with storm echoes and weaves prophecy into steel. A nascent order began to take root, decentralized, blood-bound, and defined by fealty to fury rather than hierarchy. Across scattered strongholds and wandering warbands, the principles of the Suns spread, chains as banners, silence as gospel, vengeance as law. The storm that began in Kahreth's maw reshaped the coastal orders. Where once power was centralized, now it bled through fingers grasping at fading symbols. Yet in every ruin, the symbol of the Suns was carved into stone and flesh alike. A coiled lightning bolt wrapped in chain. A testament not to mercy, but to retribution without pause. Battle of the Burning Span. On the molten bridge of Vulcan's Rift, the Suns lured enemy war chariots into a collapsing passage of fire and chain traps. Steel wheels shrieked as they were wrenched off course, plunging riders into seething rivers of lava. Jean Redmaw leapt across a fractured span, his warhammer storm jaw blazing with lightning, and drove its head into the stone to anchor a chain bridge that howled with tension and heat. Flames devoured the air around him, scorching flesh from his arms, even as he pulled comrades to safety. When the final wave surged, Jean stood firm, swinging his hammer in arcs that shattered skulls and crushed ribs to pulp, sending bodies tumbling into the inferno. Blood boiled on contact with the stone, steam rising in ghost-like shapes from the ruptured bodies. A chariot overturned, and its burning horses crashed into a cluster of retreating soldiers, dragging them screaming into the fire. As the bridge finally gave way, Jean kicked a writhing heretic through a collapsing gap, their screams swallowed by the molten glow below. Half the unit perished holding the far side, flesh melting to bone as the flames claimed them, but their sacrifice seared the Sun's name into legend. That day, they were fire dancers, not by grace, but by the fury that walked through flame without flinching. Storm of screaming glass. The skies above the cliffs of Kahreth's maw were ripped open by black-winged zealots from the cloud citadels, their obsidian-armored mounts shrieking through the ash-smeared air. The suns met them with shattered storm glass bombs, jagged thunder-infused shards hurled skyward to explode mid-flight. Zealots screamed as glass fangs tore through wings and flesh alike, ripping riders from saddles in showers of blood and molten feather. Those that fell were met with hooked chains that pulled them screaming into the churning storm fires below. Amidst the chaos, Brek One Soul unleashed a banshee's hymn. His chant, fracturing the air like shrapnel. Flying beasts spiraled downward, their eyes bleeding as their minds were shredded by sonic wrath. Suns leapt from ledges with chain whips, dragging flailing zealots into jagged stone, splattering the cliffs with pulped entrails and shattered bone. 2 stormcallers were ripped apart mid-right, their lightning turned back on them by enemy seer blades, bodies scorched to blackened husks. Though victorious, the cost was cruel. The chain forges were left shattered, their embers drowned in blood. From that silence rose a new verse of the Iron Litany, etched by survivors in soot and bone. Let ruin temper the chain, and ash remember the vow. A verse now etched into the Warband's very marrow. It binds not only steel but memory, reminding each son that their strength lies in the scars they bear, and the flames they outlast. The vow is more than grief. It is inheritance. In the echoes of broken forges and the silence of fallen rites, the line reaffirms their creed, that every ruin is a crucible, and every ember a covenant yet unbroken. It is said the wind still hums the refrain over the broken forges, a song of pain and proof that the storm demands sacrifice and never forgets, and the sacred storm fonts, tainted with ash. In vengeance, the citadels returned days later in a retaliatory raid, raising a hidden shrine beneath the salt cliffs and scattering a dozen initiates whose screams still echo in hollow caves. The blood feud birthed that night remains unresolved, a storm yet to strike, but already roaring in the bones of every son who remembers the glass fall and the rain of burning wings. Chainsong Crossing. In a frozen ravine, where the ice sang underfoot like ghostly hymns, Knock the Hollow led a silent march across a brittle river glazed in pale frost. His chains were coated in blood ice, muffling their clink to a whisper. The frostbound sect of Atlas hunters lay in wait, cloaked in white and armed with thunder-fletched spears. But Brek One Soul's chants echoed through the ice, each thrum a death knell, whacking the glacial floor until it trembled beneath armored boots. When the ambush came, it was already too late. The suns pivoted as the enemy charged, and Brek's chain percussion surged. The ice shattered beneath the zealots, sending them plummeting into freezing black water. Screams turned to gurgles as sharpened ice spears tore skin from bone. To this day, the Chainsong Crossing is remembered not only for its silence, but for the way it echoes in every breath of frost wind through the canyon. Survivors carved its litany into the ice with blood-wet chain tips. We crossed with no voice, and the storm sang our scream. Initiates now pass through the ravine in silence during rites, their chains muffled, their eyes turned downward in reverence. Those who have seen the ice, still stained in memory, claim to hear the whispers of the drowned when the river freezes over again. One commander tried to flee, only for Nock to hook him through the spine with the black hook, drag him across the fractured ice and plunge him face first into the river, holding him under until the thrashing ceased. Flesh split open on the jagged ice, and crimson plumes clouded the river like blooming rot. Severed limbs bobbed like grotesque buoys in the crimson slush. The quiet returned, only after the last voice beneath the ice faded. The suns crossed without a word, leaving behind a blood-flecked grave of shattered belief and silent horror. The Chensong crossing became a legend not just for the calm, but for the massacre beneath the frozen skin of the world. Weapons, just armor. They wield hooked blades, chain whips, and forged gauntlets. Armor is scavenged and customized, often incorporating volcanic glass, bone, and scorched metal. Their chains serve both symbolic and practical purposes, as whips, restraints, or climbing tools. Each chain is not merely forged, but consecrated in a sacred rite known as the Binding Flame, wherein the steel is quenched in storm-blessed blood and inscribed with the name of a fallen comrade or vanquished foe. These rituals take place at the foot of the storm fonts, volcanic altars where lightning is said to strike with divine intent. New initiates receive their first chain only after enduring a trial known as the Waiting, where they must carry the raw iron links through a storm-torn path of ancestral battlefields. It is said that the chains hum in resonance with the wielder's soul when wrath is righteous and slacken in doubt when conviction falters. This deep mystical lineage binds warrior to weapon as spirit to storm, making every chain an heirloom of wrath and a relic of divine memory. As members rise in rank, their weapons are enhanced with storm-bound alloys and relic fragments said to resonate with Atlas's fury. Higher ranks receive armor forged in the flame vats of Vulcan's rift, layered with obsidian scale and etched with rites of pain and power. Elite chainborn may wield twin storm-touched blades or gauntlets inscribed with runes that glow during combat. Some leaders bear mantle shrouds made from Stormcaller's cloaks, threaded with ash silk and embedded with votive sparks that flare with emotion. These symbols of rank not only offer protection, but are also considered sacred extensions of the wearer's trial-earned identity. Special units wield unique tools honed for their roles. Chainseers carry relic staffs, capped with storm-glass orbs that pulse with prophetic light, their armor lined with etched copper veins to enhance storm communion. Executioners like Knock the Hollow don full suits of chainmail draped in silence cloaks, treated fabrics that suppress sound and flash. The War Callers, a unit led by Breck One Soul, bear storm horns made from bone and copper, which channel their chants into concussive bursts. Flame-bound heavy fighters wear segmented plate, scorched in lightning rites, inscribed with brands that release electrical surges when struck. These units are both feared and revered, their presence often turning the tide of battle through ritual precision and elemental force. Attempts to counter them have become the subject of grim military doctrine among opposing factions. Some forces employ null priests to dampen storm energies, while others deploy mirror shields forged with sky steel to reflect chant concussive waves. But few succeed. The Warcaller's storm horns often overwhelm even seasoned formations before countermeasures can be enacted, and flame-bound fighters' lightning-branded armor disrupts charge cohesion, frying command links before orders can be given. Entire battalions have disintegrated under their assault, their stories reduced to scattered echoes and scorched earth. For many foes, it is not a question of defeating these units, but surviving long enough to flee their path. In the siege of Emberwake Hollow, it was the War Callers who shattered the advancing host. their chants causing tremors that collapsed an entire siege corridor. Flame-bound heavy fighters emerged from the smoke and surged forward, their lightning-branded armor discharging arcs that reduced the enemy to scorched silhouettes. The chainseers followed, their storm-glass orbs casting prophetic flashes that guided their strikes to unerring lethality. That night, enemies whispered of ghost fire and chanting walls, and the sun's reputation as ritual executioners of the storm was carved deeper into legend. Witnesses claimed even the earth recoiled at their march, and enemy formations began to crumble at the sound of echoing chants alone. Some opposing generals altered their strategies entirely, avoiding direct confrontation with these units, not out of fear of loss, but of the psychic scar their presence left behind. Veterans spoke of hallucinations, burning chains in the sky, voices that mimicked the screams of comrades long dead. Allies, in turn, reported entering trance states where fear dissipated and the storm's will became their own. Formations tightened, wounds ignored, death welcomed like old song. Morale surged like thunder before the strike. Not just a lift in spirit, but a war clarity sharpened by sound, steel, and storm. Current status: Sarsh location. Currently sighted in the shattered valley of Reth Arun, hunting a rogue priest who claims to wield the voice of Scythor, the sea god of drowned truths. A deity of deep waters, shifting tides, and veiled revelations. Scythor's followers reject the storm fury of Atlas, believing the lightning god is a false usurper of divine power. They preach that the sea's silence is older and deeper than the sky's rage, and that true faith lies not in thunder, but in the drowning of ego, the surrender to the unknowable. Scythor's priests wear kelp-wrapped arms and bear barnacle-blessed relics. Their temples are sunken and their scriptures written in brine and bone. Myths whisper that in the age before storms, it was the sea that bore the world's first memory, and that Scythor's voice once stilled the fury of Atlas during the great deluge of Shalrun. These legends, long suppressed by the storm faithful, speak of a covenant broken, where Atlas's lightning split the sea in betrayal, and from that rupture rose the first thunder. Rumors say the rogue priest has allied with one of Serra's splinter sects, a convergence that threatens to escalate the conflict from a territorial struggle to a divine schism. These sects challenge Atlas's supremacy, not through battle alone, but by unearthing relics and verses suggesting the storm was not the beginning, but the rebellion. Where Atlas is fury, sudden and cleansing, Scythor is slow erosion, the drowning of will, the silencing of fire. The Suns view this alliance as not just heresy, but an affront to the chain itself. The very foundation of their rites and scars stands in opposition to the sea's surrender, marking this conflict as a clash of elemental doctrines as much as steel and storm. Some among the Suns fear a deeper truth, that Atlas's dominion may be a splintered legacy of primordial forces, and that Scythor's emergence is not blasphemy, but reckoning. Where Atlas embodies the storm, immediate, purging, and explosive, Scythor represents the slow, inexorable drowning of certainty, the erosion of will and ego. This dichotomy has begun to reflect a deeper philosophical rift among mortals. One path venerates action, confrontation, and visible power, while the other seeks surrender, dissolution, and the embrace of mystery. In the temples and war camps alike, debates burn quietly. Is survival won by thunder or silence, by chaining the world or dissolving into its currents? A parable, often whispered among seers and battle chanters, tells of a child standing at the edge of a cliff in a storm. Atlas demands the child leap and conquer the sky, while Scythor urges the child to lie down and listen to the waves. Some interpret the leap as courage, others as hubris. Some see surrender as wisdom, others as death. The same tale, wielded by both doctrines, serves to stoke fervor and fear in equal measure. The rogue priests faction, whispered to be keepers of pre-storm relics and drowned prophecies, may soon uncover a truth older than the chains themselves. A revelation that could unravel the sun's sacred thunder-born legacy and fracture the storm-born cults beyond repair. To confront this alliance, the Bloodchain Suns have deployed distinct mission units. The Salt Walkers, a stealth division equipped with barnacle-resistant chainmail and water-sealed chain whips, scour sunken ruins and kelp-choked caverns for signs of the rogue priest. The Tempest Hounds, shock troops clad in insulated iron-padded gear, patrol the cliffs and river inlets for sudden skirmishes, their blades crackling with bottled storm charge. Meanwhile, the Echo Binders, a cadre of storm-chant seers, intercept drowned scriptures and relics, seeking omens in their runes. Farther east, the ash-spined hunters roam the dunes between Tharnval and the crags, tasked with disrupting heretic trade routes and intercepting Scythor's acolytes before they reach sanctuaries. These missions have splintered the Sun's presence across the southern shores, testing their cohesion and drawing attention from rivals.